Hey, it's so good to see everyone. Oh my goodness, it's been so long. I took some time off this summer, was greatly needed. I feel so much better, very much rested, and raring to go, as they say. And we have Mark. What a great time for me to come back for my first session. Um, Mark and I have known each other for decades. It's always a pleasure to hear what he has to say. And the usual rules, guidelines, if we don't like rules, uh, to just be respectful of each other, as we always are. Um, Mark can decide if he wants to take questions during or after. We always have a good discussion either way. If you can, uh, if you want your anything you say on chat to be read, just put read in front of it so that we make sure to get to you. If for some reason you don't want to be on camera, etc. And yeah, I think that's about it. So Mark knows the drill. I'm going to turn it over.
All right. Thanks, Dawn. Thanks, Roger. Good to see y'all. And yeah, and then I'm good with questions throughout. That works really well for me. So far we got a smaller group, so people can maybe be more involved than when there's a larger group. And then as far as the chat, I'll try to keep track of that. Roger and Dawn often do a really good job of following it because I can't follow it as fast as they are and um, facilitate and present. So I guess I'll just jump in. I usually start out with some prepared remarks. And I don't have quite so many today as I have in the past, mostly because we've covered a lot of this already. And I think the heart of these workshops, what I really love about the workshops, um, are the participation from everybody who's here, and that's what I really like emphasizing. Um, I look at this from you know the angle of autistic phenomenology, and so I have things that I've observed myself, my autistic peers, my research and study, um, and in my practice. But what's really important to me is the stories that everybody has as they fit into these themes that I've identified, because that's where this body of wisdom builds. So a few introductory remarks, and then we can just open it up for everybody's experiences and thoughts, questions about autistic integration. So yeah, so welcome to Autistic Identity Workshop 3, Integration. Acknowledging CASY's Summer of Self-Care. Integration is the epitome of self-care, and it follows the phases of discovery and acceptance. This is my model and my model only. Integration and expression. You all have heard me say before, when I developed this, I saw that it's spelled day, D-A-I-E. For fun, I looked to see if that's actually a word, and I was delighted to find that it's the archaic spelling of day, um, which I associate with light of day, dawn of a new day, seize the day, lovely day, and implicit in the model and the autistic identity phases is remembering that even as the model begins with discovery and expands to expression, whenever and however each of our autism was discovered, we've been expressing it already all along, whether it was seen or identified, but for our whole lives, because well, I'll speak for myself, and not on behalf of anybody else, but it's how I am, okay, and it's who I am, and that's the nature of neurodivergence. So today, integration, I think this is where it starts getting fun. Integration, prismatic aspects gathered into a unique, expanding mosaic. Integration, inquiry. How does my life fit all together now? Integration, answer. My life may now fit wonderfully like this. Autistic integration is placing the pieces of one's life and one's autism and one's autistic life in balance and integrity with newfound, well-earned insight and awareness. Autistic integration is placing the pieces of one's life and one's autism and one's autistic life in balance and integrity with newfound, well-earned insight and awareness. And I think this naturally follows discovery and acceptance, because discovery is realizing one's autism, okay, and knowing what it is, being able to define it. Um, Acceptance is um, moving through the autistic stages of grief, which are similar and different to other stages of grief. The difference is, in so many ways, it's not a loss. Autism discovery is a gain, and integration follows. And then with all these, I usually give a little bit of my own personal experience with the phase to get us rolling. So I'll share that, and then we'll open it up to everybody else's experiences, thoughts, questions. So a huge part of my integration has been establishing, or was establishing, it's ongoing. My discovery was a little over 6 years ago, long enough to have to count the years. So I'm a late discovered autistic. A huge part of my integration was and has been establishing at the time a very new and oh so familiar professional identity. Okay, not only as a psychotherapist or an existential psychotherapist, but as an autistic psychotherapist. Simultaneously, bringing my now self aware autism into personal and social relationships was immediately rewarding and validating. I feel like I was really lucky with that. And that was just that the people in my lives at this point who've stayed in my lives were supportive and understanding. Integration has meant knowing so much more clearly when and how I'm playing to my autistic strengths. We've been doing it all along, and we've known these are our strengths, but we might not necessarily know, how and why, um, and again, how they fit together and how we apply them specifically, intentionally, which is integration. Integration has meant so much less apologizing for who and how I am by understanding my weaknesses and knowing that none of these weaknesses are human being deal breakers. Integration has been and continues to be an experience of psychodynamically reverse engineering the story of my life. So that's just a little bit of my integration experience. So for whomever wants to share now, I'm very curious and compelled to hear your integration experiences and questions as well, for sure.
I'll jump in first because I forgot to tell people that they can raise their hand with the icon, raising your hand icon, or just wave. We'll get to you. But yeah, I just wanted to say that I was identified over 20, oh my God, 25 years ago. And I don't feel like the integration really happened until CASY started, because ultimately, as much work as we can do alone, we can't be a culture of one. And I think that integration is really holographic and experiential and immersion based. And that's one of the reasons I'm so thankful for what we do here. Yeah, that's all.
We can't have one of these events without using the word holographic. I love that.
That's my goal.
Yeah, it's implicit.
Great. I see sir hand up. Would you like to go?
Hello, thank you. Yes, I just kind of wanted to expand on the late diagnosis perspective. I am female and was late diagnosed in my early 20s after having gone through multiple diagnoses as a kid, depression, anxiety, etc. at all. And I think that it's a very unique thing being late diagnosed as opposed to early on having all of those supports and that acceptance in place. I've seen a similar thought running through several of the autism groups that I belong to on social media in regards to there should be a different diagnosis in regards to late diagnosed people as opposed to early diagnosed, just because that tends to be a completely different experience. And I would also contend that being a woman, being female, and being late diagnosed has a unique distinguishing factor in that you've generally been gaslit your whole entire life for these things that you've had to mask for in order to be socially accepted. But I would say that my personal experience integrating hasn't really even occurred until the last few years or so, and I'm currently so I spent about 20 years knowing about my late diagnoses, but not even really even knowing what that meant because A, there's not a whole lot of support or structure or resources available for late diagnosed people. And B, a lot of that information you really have to dig in order to find. So it's kind of been an ongoing process of self-discovery for me. Once I got diagnosed, I felt comfortable dropping the mask, and I was not anticipating so much social backlash from that. So it's also been a lot of experiencing repeated rejections over and over again until finding the right group of people. So I feel very fortunate in having connected with the CASY group recently and the other autism groups on social media because that's really led to a lot of information that has allowed that integration process to begin for me. But I definitely feel like there's a different experience being female and being late diagnosed, and it's it, that's all I have to add. But thank you.
Thank you. And I'm not gonna even try to speak to the female experience, but you're absolutely right based on everything that I've read and I know from the female autistics in my practice and whose work I've read and my friends and Dawn's book that it is a different experience, and it hasn't and wasn't recognized as such until like very recently.
Great. You want to go next?
Sure. For me, like I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was 6. I'm now, and at that time they thought like you couldn't have ADHD and autism, like it was like one or the other. And so I, had that diagnosis and like received special education services through school. And I always felt like there was like something else. Too, and then I guess like more recently, I think as autism has been talked about more, I'm like, wow, I think like that sort of probably fits for me, and sort of got involved with the autistic community here. Then I also I started master's in social work program, and coming into that, they actually have a support group for autistic students, and I reached out to the psychologist who runs that group, and she ran a screener through for autism with me, and she's like, "Yeah, I would think that you are autistic too, even though it wasn't like a formal diagnosis." And I don't know that I'll actually get the formal diagnosis. It is sort of expensive, and there may be some downsides, I think, to doing that, but um, yeah, I think something else that's really helped me is a lot of my professors, like two of them that are neurodivergent themselves, and so seeing them like talk about it and how how society although trying to shift sort of the view of it just being like a negative thing, even like the DSM-5, the criteria, it's very like focused on deficits, and so I think there's a big move School of Social Work about trying to like sort of flip the script on that, and um that's something I really appreciate, and so it's really helped me, I think, to see my strengths that come from it, and then also um I guess be more compassionate for myself for the challenges that also come with it. I can actually share something that one of my professors made publicly available. It's not entirely about neurodiversity, but it is partially, and I can put that in the chat if you'd like.
Yeah. Or were you going to, or had you just?
Oh, I haven't yet. I have to
Okay.
how do you fix it?
I'll for it. And I'm reading the chat here, some really great comments, and something you said right there about compassion. Self-compassion, I think, absolutely is is a part of the integration process. And it's, I mean, this is my way of breaking these things up and putting them together. So a lot of these things can fit anywhere, but maybe that's the point at which when when the discovery is clear and the acceptance has occurred, even though it's all kind of ongoing, that self-compassion is a huge part of integration. And so the comments, Dawn says, have people here ever felt whole? What did that feel like? What was the context? Great question. And again, that's integration, feeling whole. And I think a lot of times it's, I feel whole and I feel whole now, and recognizing, well, I've always felt whole doing this. Okay. Or I've always felt whole around these people. Okay. Or in this context. So maybe that's something that people might want to respond to. Always feeling different, necessarily not whole. Very, very much with the late diagnosis, which involves loneliness, and going through the grief and figuring out how to nurture oneself after all these efforts. And as we were growing up, being chastised. That's a part of the. I mean, I don't think anybody gets out of an autistic childhood without some sort of relational developmental trauma, even in the most supportive of families or the most supportive of schools or most supportive of communities. And then, yeah, learning to trust myself again. Another comment that implies that way, way, way back, there was a certain level of self-trust that maybe was overruled or overridden, okay, or rejected. Still waiting for that. I think that's another part of integration, is waiting and looking. Yeah, there's a really nice comment about the process and the acronym. So I really appreciate that. And the benefit that people may be getting out of this, it's all about the participation. Okay. I mean, what benefit this provides, I think, is all of us talking about this and all of you all sharing your stories and questions. So who's next?
I'll go. So hi everyone, my name. I would say for integration, I feel like I'm coming into like a huge, like I've crossed a hurdle, and I'm starting to integrate more in a kind of a different way because I was finally diagnosed 2 weeks ago. It almost makes me want to cry. So I was diagnosed with ADHD a couple of years ago. I thought I had early dementia. It was really, really scary. And my doctor was like, "Yeah, let's get you a psych eval." And they were like, "Yeah, you have ADHD." It's like, okay, is that really like? I doubted it. I was like, I don't think that's what's going on. But once I started researching it, I felt like it was right in a lot of ways. But at the time that I went in for the assessment, the assessor said up front, like, as an adult woman, I may not recognize some things in you if you're high masking. And like at the time, I knew nothing about any of this. Like I hadn't researched, I didn't know what I was going into. But he was like, if I might not be able to put you in the box of autism, for example. It's like, okay, well, I'm not autistic anyways. I don't think I had no concept of any of this. So after the fact, when I was researching, I was just like, wait a minute, this feels like me the more that I got into it. And so I finally was diagnosed by someone who actually recognizes it in women just a couple weeks ago. It's been such a long, I feel like I've been in such huge research mode for like over 2 years now. And now I feel like I can fully I'm in this pause where I can breathe and just take in all of the information as yes, I can accept this now as my own, where before it was I don't know if I own this as mine and take it as a truth, or if I'm just making things up, or trying to convince myself, or if people will believe me. So I think integration also can be such a huge thing of just once you receive validation externally,
but it's also come from the internal, like, no, like, this feels like a truth, like, someone hear me, you know. So that's been a huge piece for me, but I feel like integrating the information, yeah, it's coming more and more, and I'm sure there's going to be more hurdles, but just like being able to tell, like, the first person that I got to the tell of, like, verbalizing, this is my experience, this is who I am, these are the challenges, these are the strengths, and like owning it and integrating in that way of just like, this is my reality and I'm bringing you into it and I want to share this piece of myself with you, has been really healing.
Really good to hear.
Hey, Don, did you want to say something?
Yeah, it's kind of a switch of topic. If I didn't want to cut anyone off, if they wanted to continue in that vein, just give a second for people to jump in. Okay, so my question is, a lot of us have been talking more recently over the last couple of years or so about how diagnosis, I prefer identification for many reasons, but how diagnosis is basically based on trauma responses rather than the core of autism, which is a great deal of sensory experience, sensitivity on all kinds of levels. And so I'd like to get your opinion, Mark, and whoever else, how that kind of negative identification sets us back in terms of integration.
Great question. I don't have a brief or concise answer except, yeah. I mean, it does set it back. And you said yourself, I mean, that, trauma, okay, that the trauma responses, and we've talked in some of these other workshops about how um, our autism protects us from the trauma of not being autistic, but the trauma that comes along with um, how our autism is experienced by others, or what it elicits or brings out, or how it's held or misheld. But I think that's it. And that you look at, and this is maybe true with so many DSM diagnoses, that what's being measured is the trauma response, and that obscures what's really happening, including the strengths and the early pain and suffering and struggle. And this is, I mean, I believe this. I believe it absolutely. It informs my practice, I've felt this as long as I've been studying and practicing psychotherapy. That every symptom, every single symptom has a healthy voice. Every single symptom has a meaning, and if we listen deep enough and clearly enough, we can interpret, okay, and express, integrate the healthy message within the symptomology, okay. And if we're talking about a true um, disorder, we can use the term symptoms, okay. I don't believe in using the term symptoms for autism or any form of neurodivergence. Okay, that's how these things are viewed in the in the societal and cultural context. Um, Features, that's a more benign clinical word. I like aspects. Okay, but every aspect, okay, has a healthy message. We just have to listen for it and look for it, and that is disrupted, okay, when the trauma occurs from a very early age. And again, it may not be shocking aversive trauma. Often it's not. Relational developmental trauma affects the mind similarly, and the brain similarly. In some ways it's more insidious because you can't see it or identify it. um, so yeah, I didn't answer your question, Don, but um, I stand in agreement. I think
Well,
that the broader question, or the implications of that, is how are we, not how would we, because we are, how are we shifting that perspective? And um, University of Michigan School of Social Work moving from deficits, okay, away from a deficit model. Absolutely. That's a perfect example. How, not how could we or how would we, but how are we and how do we continue to do that?
Yeah, I feel like it can become so meta, like the Gordian knot, because the very trauma you're trying to get over tells you you're weak. The message inside is that you're weak for having the trauma in the first place. And there's that, like I said, that whole knot that you have to eventually just take out the sword and cut it, because you're never going to untangle it, right? And also, if you don't mind a follow-up question, you may not have any ready examples. I don't want to put you on the spot, but can you think of any particular reframings? You were talking about symptoms being reframed as important messages. If you can say more, that would be great. If not, don't worry about it.
Yeah, think about, anything that we identify, I think we could all observe this, anything that we identify as autistic, um, if we put it in a beneficial context or a nurturing context, it's, um, it can be positive. It is. And I think here's an example, that this, I got this from wisdom from a neurodivergent colleague who teaches and trains, that, for example, heightened sensitivity. Okay, the sensory the sensory sensitivities, that's a symptom that's seen as a problem. Okay, all of the sensory issues. Okay, and it does make some things really difficult. Okay, it makes a lot of things really hard. It can make daily living really hard. The other side of that is sometimes there's hyposensitivity, which makes things hard. The wisdom that I grabbed onto immediately, okay, and explored and explore with my clients. The other side of that sensitivity and that sensory experience where we feel so many things so deeply is what pleasure feels like. Okay, when something really, really, really is just right. Okay, and I can't say, um, I'm not going to say that there's more pleasure to be experienced for the sake of the autism, but that sensitivity goes both ways. Okay, and I see a lot of odds that for all the times that we feel something, um, that's unnerving or uncomfortable because we're so sensitive, how many times do we get to feel something that feels so good, so soothing? Okay, overwhelmingly wonderful because we're so sensitive and we can really take it in. And if you look at this in the idea of integration is how can I feel that way more often? How can I feel as much of that as I can? And so I think that's where we may pay the price for that, under fluorescent lights or in noisy places or wearing a scratchy sweater or something. Okay, um, that's one example. But I think if any of us went down the you know the list, we could see, oh, this is how if we spin it, redeem it, and give it space, it's not at all a symptom. I mean, enthusiasms, okay? Monotropism. We all know how wonderful and powerful that can be and how great it feels. It's a flow state. Overly persistent thought patterns. That's focus.
There's a couple requests to read the question again, so I'll read the question that Don had. And question is, have people here ever felt whole? What did that feel like? What was the context?
I thought it was a question where she said, "Did that set us back?" That's the one I didn't hear. I don't know, Miriam. Yeah, thank you so much. That is what I meant.
Yes, so I can repeat that. I was asking, in light of the fact that the DSM relies on trauma responses rather than the functional core of autism, if you want to put it that way. How does that negativity, those negative aspects of our experience, how does that set us back as we try to integrate the positive aspects of our way of being? Somebody's asking about the DSM. So the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual is what Neuronormative Society uses to check boxes to determine whether or not you're autistic. And you have to have, I mean, Roger knows more about this technically than I, but you have to fulfill so many of each area to be considered autistic. But each of those little things that are given, for example, meaningless rituals, it's so relative, right? What is a meaningless ritual really depends on who's talking about it, who's doing it. So reframing that is important.
How many of us grew up with rituals that we could never find meaning in, okay, that were accepted and enforced, only at a certain point in our lives to really decide those rituals had no meaning for us? And I guess I'm thinking of institutionalized rituals specifically.
I mean, all of them. I thought all of them were shallow and at best and harmful to people and living things at worst. And whereas my rituals were about getting into the flow state, which I felt was an energetic gift for myself and the things around me.
And we've got more hands up. And I'm thinking in order. There's, am I pronouncing your name right?
Yes, yes, you got it. Okay.
And then we've got, and then, so yeah.
Hi, Mark. Thank you for offering this. And I guess I just got diagnosed a year ago at 45, and I just been and like this thing of identity is almost like always like going over my head. You know, I found your things on YouTube, and there's something with the word or something that it's like it's just there's something foreign. Like I've like the work that I've been doing with my therapy is like, you know, regulating emotions, distinguishing emotions, like getting more like connected to the nervous system to feel more in the body, that type of things. But then when it comes to identity, like it's like I don't understand. Like there's something that it kind of like goes over my head, and I'm just wondering, like, you know, as I'm trying to kind of like uncover that, and like, what is it about like really like chipping away of like your life, you know, and kind of like distinguishing what was there and what you made up. I'm just a little, you know, I'm just wondering if as I share this, anything, you know, you can kind of like uh, open up or you know, yeah, just I don't know if that rings a bell in anything.
I think it's a great question about an abstract concept. And I'm going to try not to give an abstract answer, but when I think of identity, I mean, I think of identity when I think of the phrase "I am." And you know, my wheelhouse, you know, here and in my practice is all about establishing a positive autistic identity.
And the I am.
That involves individual or personal meaning making. So I think I am, okay, which is different than if we're talking about identity first. I am is different than I have or I do. I think you know, people identifying their jobs. You know, that I come from a family of teachers, and
they will identify
very positively with being teachers. So when they say I am a teacher, they're identifying with that, and they could tell you all the things that are meaningful. have multiple identities. Ideally, that they're congruent.
And overlapping.
We can have identities that were foisted upon us, okay, or negative identities. I think we can move through or outgrow identities. So when I think of identity, and I really would welcome other thoughts, but for me, I think it starts with I am, and we get to define that, and then presenting one's identity. When I think of establishing one's identity in a way that feels authentic, I think of do our ways of being represent our values, not morals, not rules, but just what we hold to be true. That then as we're integrating in whatever way in the world and with other people and in communities everywhere, okay, that we can somehow express our identity in ways that other people can maybe see us as we see ourselves and as we want to be seen. So that's, yeah, still pretty abstract probably.
But I'll just come
Back to when I think identity, I think I am, and we get to determine that.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I start to kind of like, and I think so. So in this workshop is really about like exploring this aspect of autism that is within us, or that we are, that part of our identity that is, and and um, and when you're meaning integration, so is not so much like, do you mean integration like processing, or you mean integrating with other, connecting to other people?
I think both.
Yeah.
And the things you're talking about, the book about autism and polyvagal theory it's really good. It's very scientific, very it doesn't read like fiction.
Okay.
But there's a whole lot in that. So I think when we're talking about self-regulation and improving heart rate variation, that's internal integration. And that's happening simultaneously as we integrate with other people and other experiences. And it really is happening simultaneously because if we're trying to integrate socially, okay, and we're in a place of um, social anxiety or dysregulation
That's all.
happening, where simultaneously the opposite could occur, that if we're able to find a calming place or a calming presence and calm ourselves down. So everything that you're talking about is a part of it. It's also happening in the way we express ourselves, which will come into the next workshop, how we put these things together. I don't see these as fixed pieces. I like thinking about things in flux. And so it's kind of always happening all the time. And what's happening out here is affecting what's happening in here and vice versa.
Okay. Thank you. And you mentioned the book on autism and polyvagal theory, and so, and what other like tools or approach, is there anything else that you recommend like that, this type of?
I think and that book was recommended by me, and I really appreciate the recommendation I got from a fellow autistic. That what he says in the book, and this is very practical and specific. Okay, and yeah, thanks for the comment. Autism and polyvagal terms, Sean Inderbitson.
Okay.
Yeah, that saves me from going through my books and trying to pull it out. Thank you. That um, that the very best things we can do practically with this um, involve developing more regulation within ourselves. And I mean, and you hear this all the time, that activity, exercise, and then also mindfulness or meditation. And it doesn't have to be formal. It doesn't have to be a sport, okay, or a workout, and it doesn't have to be some very specific form of meditation. What it means is practicing exciting things that allow us to bring our heart rate up, okay, not just for our physical well-being, but but for all of the nice neurotransmitters we get from that, okay, and then have a pleasant sensation, an exciting sensation when we're up, Okay, excitement's the exact same thing as anxiety. It's just the spin. Okay, assuming there's not danger. Okay, but in most cases, when we're having an anxiety attack, we're not under immediate physical threat. The mindfulness, which really is just simply being synchronized and present in an experience, feeling whole, that allows us to bring it down. Okay, so I think that's practical, and then the more subjective part of it is just observing our curiosities, our interests, whims, okay, fears, and seeing how they fit together, um, in the understanding of, yeah, this is what autism is to me, and that this is what being human is to me.
Yeah. Do you have one last thing? You know, it's because I was thinking that declaring the I am is like there's something that I'm like, okay, maybe it's like a fear of just declaring and putting myself in the world that is like maybe holding me back from like or like wanting to get it perfect, like where I'm like I gotta get this so I don't say anything so I don't yeah, so then yeah, that's what I just thought about.
And the idea that that identity first autism, that's an idea. Nobody should feel like they need to to describe anything about themselves in that way.
Okay.
That's how some of us choose to identify, but that's not it's not right or wrong. Okay, it's how some of us choose to identify. But yeah, that fear, um, of course. Okay, and that's the and that's something to examine and to interpret. And it's not that whatever it is that we're establishing, that everything is in the interest or pursuing the goal of the I am, not necessarily.
And
Yeah, and I think the fear, I mean, this goes back to, to the denial in the autistic experience that we've related here in the stages of grief, fearing that it's too good to be true, or maybe I'm not, or maybe I'm an imposter. Okay, that fear is really wrapped up in that identity, because it's for all the reasons that we understand and have expressed. And I think um, for most of us at one point in our life have some sense of an imposter syndrome that that plays into the fear. That what if I'm not autistic enough, or what if I'm not a good enough autistic, or I'm autistic, so that means I'm supposed to memorize all these things, right? Or play the piano like this. Not necessarily. Yeah, ideally, I think it means that you get to be more you. And thanks.
Can you hear me?
yeah.
Okay, perfect. I wanted to first jump on something that Dawn had said about diagnosis. For me, I've always looked at, and I've told clients this, that diagnosis is an answer to a question that we've had. And so it kind of gives us a framework of, okay, so this is what I've been wondering about. These are the things that, like, all those questions, to kind of answer some of those questions. And I've used this with my clients for a couple of years, but then when I got diagnosed with autism myself, I'm then trying to put this on myself. I'm like, so what is this diagnosis of autism giving me? And I actually, it was another training on here on CASY that I was listening to a lady using that type of framework. And so now, at least in that diagnostic realm, like, I do understand that it tends to be negative. So I always try to reframe it, like, okay, so what has it given you? What are you able to do with it, pull from it, in that kind of an aspect, and try to flip it a little bit. Um, but then the integration part, um, I really resonate with, again, I hope I say his name right, with a lot of, like, I've been diagnosed about a year now, and I'm in my 40s, and I just feel like I feel like an imposter. And I'm still struggling with the integration part, and I think a lot of it is the fear of rejection. Of like, I very much am still trying to put on the professional face when I'm at work, and I put on another face when I'm around family and friends, and then there's the private me that nobody else sees, and trying to integrate that into life is proving to be extremely difficult. And I think a lot of it does stem from the fear, obviously, of rejection. I'm really interested in the next one, workshop expression. Maybe that'll be helpful, but it's just, as therapists, it's one thing to learn about and try to aid others, but then put it on yourself can become a tad bit more difficult.
Yes. Yeah. And that fear, that may be a legitimate fear. That fear of rejection is real, and there may be real consequences, and that the I am autistic in the workplace, or um, in the family or in certain circles, that it's no one can say that, yeah, that's what you need to do, because it really, the fear's there, and that may be a conditioned response, in the line of the kind of trauma that Don talked about. But it could, there could very well be a significant risk, and that could leave one still feeling divided, okay, between the different faces that they turn towards, or the different masks. I think it just takes time to sort it out, and because you
I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that's where I'm at. Like, I've lived divided for so long. I don't want to anymore. I want to be authentically and genuinely who I am, and not have to mask for other people's benefit. But that comes with a lot of that's going to come with a lot of rejection, I do think, and that's something I guess I have to come to terms with.
Well, and only you know the context. I've got like 9 minutes. And so we've got three more folks who've got their hands up. So I know sometimes you all are, I've got a client at 5. I know you all are sometimes able to continue the conversation. But I think, yeah, that there, people can say, I can say that I've been pleasantly surprised, and that there's been less rejection that I may have feared, but nobody can really say that for somebody else in their life and in their situations. Um, and so there's got to be, calculated risks and feeling it out. So just moving, if I think I've got the order right. So
Hi. I first want to say thank you. I'm so happy for Don and Roger, and that we, found a way to fund to keep this going. And I've seen Mark before, and I'm so happy to see Mark again. And thank you.
Thanks. It's good to be here.
Well, I talk fast. Hopefully, I'll get done fast here. But I think in terms of integration and identity, I am not quite 6 years self-diagnosed, but I think probably phase one, as you talk about the grief, was like, it's not my fault. Oh, that's what's wrong. And I think a phase two maybe had been sorting out the mental, emotional, sensory, physical, like what am I compared to, oh, that's what that is, kind of thing. And so I think now I'm starting to identify what my issues are, like processing or sensory overloads. And so an integration that I noticed that happened out in the real world is sort of a physical mental processing thing. Is maybe it's because clerks don't pay enough attention to customers anymore. Maybe it's because some have old machines, some have new machines, but I've noticed I have a new problem with doing the credit card payment. And what I did was, in knowing I'm slower processing I'm identified with that now, not in a bad way. It's almost like a boundary. It's almost like a taking care of myself becomes more important. And so I'm standing in a busy retail and oops, not doing it exactly right. The person with me and the clerk, I felt their anxiety. Oh God, she doesn't know what. Let me. Oh, we have to. This is busy. Come on, you know. And I stood up for myself in taking another moment. In other words, I can process this if people would give me a moment.
Yeah.
But the pressure is that neurotypical pressure, which doesn't allow for unseen disabilities like this. So there's like mental stuff like that, and then with my sister, uh, and this is just the last one I'll give. My sister gave me 3 years ago. You know, do you want to go to therapy with me to solve our battles? Yes, I said, but that never happened. And then the next thing was my therapist says I need space from you. So I respect that. But during those last several years, she doesn't take the space. She still calls, texts, you know, she does random FaceTimes when my other sister visits. So I took the opportunity on the first three-way call to calmly, identified now, integrated now, say, hey, you know, I'm sorry to say, I have to say this, but, you know, 3 years ago you told me to give you space. That's why I'm not doing what you ask. That's why I'm not here. That's why I don't understand. And so I'm just taking the moment to say, has anything changed? You know, because this is mixed messaging and it's really just control. And I'm really just setting a calm boundary for the first time and knowing that I can do without this if it doesn't have an explanation. Like, I don't like this game. What is this game? Where am I in your game? Like, the backlash was incredible, but I stood in it and I thought, okay, I'm going to continue with like not caring what you're doing in drama, you know, and so it's an integration to be able to know how I feel about all of that and say something calmly and not.
Absolutely. And and being able to calm yourself enough to do that, to be calm, okay, in the, in the family system. And I mean, you just gave another example, to Don's question, the symptom of processing slowly, okay. The other side of that as a strength is taking that it's an invitation to take more time for yourself.
Okay.
And with most things, if we take a little bit more time, we're going to do a better job. Okay. If you're taking time to process, okay, so that you can hold boundaries with your family, or taking time to process so you can, get through the credit card thing, ultimately it's going to be less stressful, and you're going to make fewer mistakes. So yeah, so things next.
May I just say one more thing? I'm so
Yeah.
sorry. So and the other thing is that with people needing me constantly, um, I have suddenly realized that I did everything they said almost as a way to have a friend or be popular, and but the empathic toll was so hard. So it's just like you say, it's really just coming now to boundaries, and I'm really happy for that.
Yeah.
Taking
Good for you.
my time.
Wonderful.
Yeah, that's a great example of integration. And then I'm out of here in 3 minutes. So very well still be talking, or somebody else will. So I'm going to say my goodbyes now, and just that I so appreciate all y'all's attendance, and being able to be here with you. And I'll see some of you sometime in the fall, hopefully.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to thank you for this talk. All of this information has been really helpful to me, especially since I'm still moving through the integration process myself. I'm also studying sociology at university, and a large part of my study is focusing on the dialectical tension between autistic sociality and the dominant social norms. And in my own work integrating, I've noticed myself moving through phases. Other people here have kind of touched on this a little bit, but my own personal experience has been unmasking, but not having very clear boundaries with that, and then facing a lot of social backlash and rejection, and then learning better, healthier boundaries, and kind of finding a healthy balance between authentically being myself and also trying to fit into other social spaces. And I'm just wondering, in your own professional opinion, if you've also seen integration move through similar phases like that as well.
Certainly. Yeah, absolutely. And it's just like that. It's nonlinear. And I look at it more as patterns and patterns that kind of overlap with other patterns. And yeah, there's a through line if we want to look for it. Um, but the through line is not right. It's woven and weaving continually. I'll make a graceful exit now, or a semi-graceful exit.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Much appreciated. See y'all.
So I just wanted to take a minute we have so many people here who are more recently identified, and I just want to share, this is so common for us, for one thing, to not know who we are. We become the masks. They become so integral to how we function and how we relate to other people and getting their acceptance. And we know that it's scary to even start to probe who we are. I can say that everyone I know believes it's worth it. And also that it takes a lot of time to get through the stages of grief about what we lost in our lives, especially I think those of us who had identifications later in life. There's that immediate sense of relief and validation. And then you go through, hey, wait a minute. And then you get sad and angry sometimes and everything that goes with that process, which, as Mark pointed out, is not linear. Um, so yeah, just be gentle with yourselves, and you definitely have support here. We all know what that feels like. So does anybody else want to go before we close?
Looks like he has her hand up. Would you like to say something? Or you're on mute.
Hi. Sorry, I was playing around with my camera for a sec. Yeah, this conversation is bringing up so much for me. Something that stood out that Mark said was like how some identities are sort of foisted upon you, and I don't know. Short of sharing my entire life story, I feel that so strongly. The reason I am late diagnosed is because I hit a really awful burnout during and after grad school to become an art therapist, and I just had this huge grieving and epiphany process around oh, maybe the reason I have a special interest in psychology is because I don't understand people and I really want to. And I was also very much, not to get into too much therapy lingo, but I was very much a parentified eldest daughter, of a parentified oldest daughter. So there was this huge line of women in my family who just kind of are neurodivergent, took on other people's stuff and masked as being very, very kind and helpful and giving. And I'm from the Midwest, so there's a lot of Catholic, I will give you the shirt off my back sort of culture to unpack there. And part of me, accepting that I'm autistic is wow, wait a second. Had I had the chance to have a healthy, affirming upbringing, I don't think I would become a therapist again. I think this maybe this identity that I wanted to pursue professionally was just an extension of the mask that I had on as that I developed as a child. And now I'm at this point where like I'm I'm doing all the things that I would do as a kid. Like I had this huge skill regression, and I basically felt like a child for like 18 months. Like I couldn't work. I could like all I could do was like sleep and eat, and then I just out of desperation because I was running out of money, just took a job as a respite provider for this like little autistic boy, and I didn't have to do treatment plans. I wasn't trying to fix anything. My whole job was just to be with him and make sure he was safe and fed and, you know, happy while his parent rested. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this kid is so unmasked and so joyful. Excuse me, so joyful, and also like has some big emotions. And my job was to like, sort of de-escalate meltdowns and stuff and like just be with him. And I think through that experience, I it really brought me in touch with like my own like little when I was that age, like, oh wow, so this is what it looks like when you're supported, and this is what it looks like when you can just be yourself authentically, and no one's trying to fix anything. And it's been such a healing experience for me. And I don't know if I'll ever become a therapist, but I think if I do, it'll very much be from a place of like, all right, I have needs I need to meet. And I'm not doing this from a place of trauma. I'm doing this from a place of like I actually want to. um I don't know. I just don't know where I'm going, and I think that's why I'm sharing this too. Is that it's like this huge place of unknown. Like my peers are like getting licensed and setting up practices, and I'm just like hanging out with kids, and I'm like, oh, I just gotta accept it. Like this is where I am right now. So yeah, that's my spiel. I'm very much not alone, and that feels good. I'm so glad I found this community to, connect that experience to other people. Yeah, just having community. Oh my goodness. Thanks y'all for putting these sessions on because, yeah, it's so needed. So yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Yeah. Just being able to do things at our own pace is such a revelation, and it's honestly hardly ever supported, even after we have an identification. Like there's always going to be that pressure there. But as we were saying earlier, sometimes being slow is actually a gift and a benefit in the right context. So that kid is lucky to have you. I wish I had someone like you when I was a younger kid, for sure. Anybody else out there?
I was just gonna say I really appreciate sharing, and it's very relatable. Like for me, going into social work, a lot of it is like I feel like I've really struggled to like understand social cues for a lot of my life. So yeah, it's definitely like a motivation to learn that. And then also been through like trauma and trying to understand my neurodiversity. Like I think all of it is like, I mean, I do want to help others, and that's definitely one of my goals as well. But another goal is like to just understand myself better and like why I'm different and how that sort of fits in with everything. So I appreciate it.
I was asking where you get a job like that for the providing respite for kids.
Yeah, it's I live and it might go under different names in different states, but I think it's through Medicaid. It's through Children's Long-Term Support. So it's an accommodation that he's given, I think, through Medicaid. I'm not sure what's happening with that because everything is scary right now, but it was something I kind of stumbled across on Facebook. Someone had posted an ad saying, "Hey, respite providers needed. Contact this agency. We'll set you up with an interview with the family to see if you're a good fit." And yeah, it's a really great job. It's very rewarding to know that you're supporting a family, giving the caregivers a break, really. But technically, the kid is my boss, so it's I don't know. It's a really yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, state supported. I think it goes by other names in different places. But yeah, it feels good to be a caregiver and to be paid for it. Yeah, it's really needed work.
Somebody else also mentioned in the chat that school districts are also often open to that. So maybe just directly contacting them might lead to good fruit. Oh, and to earlier point, following the rules. I can speak for myself. I am never going to understand how that works in neuronormative society, because it looks to me like they make a bunch of rules and then they know exactly how to break them. And I am never going to be able to incorporate that into my understanding. Things have got to mean what they mean all the time, pretty much, or I'm lost. And I think that's a pretty typical autistic experience. So I was glad that you brought that up. Okay, anybody else? Okay, well, I love it when people go online, go to our Facebook page, or we also have a Discord server to continue these conversations, because they're so important and they never end. The conversations never end on a practical level. I can't tell you how much I appreciate all of you being here. What a great discussion as always. And we have lots of really, really cool things coming up over the next months. We had the Summer of Self-Care, which has been going amazingly. We had something like, I can't remember the number, but something like 40 applicants to actually participate, like give sessions for the Summer of Self-Care, and we had 6 spots. And they were all so amazing, we decided that we were just going to carry those people over that didn't get into the sessions of Summer of Self-Care to present over the next year. So be looking for those events coming up, probably starting in late August or early September. Roger's in charge of those scheduling things. So yeah, I'll just say thanks again and hope to see you guys again soon.